Welcome to Day 55 on the Trail. We have 5 readings for today. From Acts chapter 8, verses 4 through 25. From Exodus chapter 28, the 63rd and 64th Psalms, Job chapter 32, verses 1 through 22, and the Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 7, verse 1 through chapter 8, verse 16. We have not talked much about the book of Job, so I wanted to spend a little time here today. As a reminder of our earlier readings, Job is in the midst of great suffering. He has lost everything: his family, his wealth, and his health. Then 3 friends come to visit Job. Now initially, they remain silent for 7 days, recognizing his suffering. But then they decide to enter a series of debates with Job, and their words seem to do very little to help Job. Each friend addresses Job multiple times, and their speeches seem to get harsher with every round. But what is their focus and the purpose of their speeches? Are they asking, why is Job suffering? After all, we often see that as the theme of the book. But is it really? In fact, I would say it is less about the nature of suffering and more about cause and effect. How do we interact with the effects that God causes? Or how do we know if God has caused those effects? With Job, the 3 friends are operating on a couple of very basic assumptions. First, God is causing Job to suffer. God doesn't just permit Job's suffering, God is the author of it. Even if God is punishing Job justly, God is still the cause. Second, they are operating with a worldview where people get what they deserve. The righteous are rewarded, and the wicked are appropriately punished. So the blame, the why of Job's suffering, must fall on Job. Nevertheless, Job continues to proclaim his innocence. In Job chapter 31, beginning in verse 35, "Oh, that I had one to hear me! Here's my signature, let the Almighty answer me. Oh, that I had the indictment written down by my adversary. Surely I would carry it on my shoulder. I would bind it on me like a crown. I would give him an account of all my steps. Like a prince, I would approach him." Notice that Job is assuming that God is just. Therefore, he is looking for an advocate to plead his case. This is where Job's debate with his friends stalls. The friends say that Job is guilty. Job proclaims his innocence. Then, in chapter 32, we meet a new, younger, respectful, and patient friend. His name is Elihu, which means, "He is my God." We do not know for certain if Elihu's response is correct or better than the other 3 friends. Job never replies to him, as he does with his other 3 friends. Also, God does not say anything to Elihu like he will with the other 3 friends. There is no critique of him for us to go on. We will hear a lengthy argument from Elihu, and it is very different from, "It is your fault, Job, and you need to figure it out." So here's a brief overview of Elihu's speech to help you over the next few days. First, Job is proclaiming his innocence. But is anyone really innocent? As Paul says in Romans chapter 3, beginning in verse 10, "As it is written, there is no one who is righteous, not even one. There is no one who has understanding. There is no one who seeks God." Perhaps in Job's mind, based on what he knows, he is righteous. However, none of us are perfect, and we cannot stand on our own merits before God. This is a powerful reminder of the necessity of humility in our approach to God. Second, God teaches through suffering. Job 36, beginning in verse 8. "And if they are bound in fetters and caught in the cords of affliction, then he declares to them their work and their transgressions, that they are behaving arrogantly. He opens their ears to instruction, and commands that they return from iniquity. If they listen and serve him, they complete their days in prosperity and their years in pleasantness. But if they do not listen, they shall perish by the sword and die without knowledge. Not the most comforting words, but we are reminded that we learn through suffering. Third, God is beyond knowing. Elihu ends his speech with a description of the nature and the power of God's creation. Given the power, complexity, and mystery of the creation that we can see, how can we expect to understand the God who created these things? Job and his friends are reaching for a cause to the effect that has shaped his life. However, as the readers of Job, we have more information. We know the cause. Recall from chapter 1 that the reason for Job's suffering is to demonstrate Job's loyalty to the accuser. In essence, we see God trusting Job to maintain his faithfulness through suffering. Therefore, as we finish the book of Job and listen to God's rebuke of Job, please take note of 3 points that are often overlooked in the details of the story. Number 1, God is present. Number 2, God is aware of what is happening. God does not stand aloof, but is involved in the lives of his creation. And number 3, God cares. In the end, God comes to Job and reminds him of who he is. God comes to Job to teach him and to restore him. God trusted Job, and now he reminds Job of why he can be trusted. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, stay on the trail.